I built that company from scratch. Every late night, every skipped vacation, every sacrifice. It was all for them. My kids watched me bleed and they promised me loyalty, respect, and love. Then, one day, without warning, it all fell apart. They forced me out, laughed in my face, told me I was too old to run the company anymore. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you loved, stay with me. This story isn't just about losing control. It's about what happens when the underestimated finally strikes back. My name is Richard Thompson. I started Thompson Tech in a small garage 25 years ago. From the moment I sketched that first product on a napkin, I poured everything into it: time, money, energy, and love. It became more than a company. It became my life. My children, Alex and Michael, grew up watching me work, thinking the world revolved around the family business. For years, I believed they were learning about dedication, about responsibility, about vision. I believed they admired me. I believed they respected me. I was wrong. It started subtly. Offhand comments during board meetings, questions about my capacity to lead, whispered doubts to other executives. I laughed it off, thinking, surely they can't mean this seriously. Then, one morning, I was called into a board meeting. The tension in the room was thick, almost suffocating. Alex and Michael sat across from me, faces calm, expressions polite. Behind them, other board members avoided eye contact, shifting nervously in their seats. Alex opened the discussion. "Dad, we think it's time for new leadership. We appreciate everything you've done, but the company needs a fresh perspective." Michael nodded, smiling slightly. "We just want what's best for the company, for the family legacy." I felt a chill run through me. I had given them everything: my trust, my guidance, my life. And now, they were ousting me. I asked the board if this was a unanimous decision. They hesitated. Alex and Michael leaned forward. "It's in the best interest of the company," they said softly, like repeating a mantra to convince themselves. I walked out of that meeting feeling like I had been erased, not just from the company I built, but from my own life. But as I drove home that evening, replaying every word, every look, a small spark ignited. A memory of a meeting I'd had years ago, an agreement buried deep in corporate records, a secret 37% stake, a stake they didn't know existed. And in that quiet moment, I realized the game wasn't over, not by a long shot. The days after the board meeting were the hardest I've ever faced. I watched Alex and Michael take control, sending out announcements, changing schedules, moving people around, all while pretending I was retired and at peace with the decision. But peace was the last thing I felt. Every press release, every congratulatory email they sent themselves felt like a knife twisting in me. The company I had built from the ground up, my life's work, was being rewritten without me. And the worst part? They were smiling while doing it, laughing quietly behind my back, confident I had no idea. I went to my office one last time before leaving, just to gather a few personal items. The walls, once filled with awards, pictures, and memories, now felt cold, sterile, alien. I ran my hand over the desk I had built myself, remembering the nights I stayed late working on prototypes, the times I had taken calls at 2 a.m., the sacrifices no one saw. And now it was theirs. On the way out, I noticed Alex standing near the elevator, smirking. "Enjoy your retirement, Dad," he said casually, as if those words didn't carry a lifetime of betrayal. Michael was right behind him, nodding. "You did well, but it's time for us to lead." I walked past them, holding my head high, though inside I was seething. On the elevator ride down, I felt a strange clarity wash over me. I wasn't powerless. Not entirely. I remembered the hidden 37% stake I had kept quiet for years. It wasn't filed publicly, but it was real, enforceable, and most importantly, it could change everything. That night, I sat in my study at home, going through old contracts, double-checking the legal language, ensuring every detail was in my favor. My hands trembled slightly, not with fear, but with anticipation. For the first time since being ousted, I felt a glimmer of hope. I realized something important. Power isn't always visible. Sometimes it's hidden, waiting for the right moment to surface. And my moment was coming. I didn't rush. I didn't make a move immediately. I let them bask in their false victory, let them believe the company was fully under their control. Every arrogant decision they made, every small mistake, added weight to the eventual reckoning. By the end of the week, I had assembled all the documents, consulted my lawyer, and prepared for the quiet, inevitable shift. They had taken the stage, but I still held the script. Alex and Michael thought they were the executioners. They didn't realize I was about to become the silent executioner of their overconfidence. And when that time came, they wouldn't know what hit them. The following week felt like watching a slow-motion train wreck, but this time, I was driving the track. Alex and Michael strutted through the office like kings who had inherited a throne they didn't deserve. They changed policies, approved budgets, and assigned projects, all while completely unaware of the ticking time bomb in the background. I sat quietly at home, reviewing the corporate records one more time. The 37% stake I had quietly accumulated over the years wasn't just a number. It was leverage, control, and a silent power no one had seen coming. And while they celebrated their victory, I realized something. The higher they climbed, the harder they would fall. The first subtle moves began with minor notifications. My lawyer started sending formal letters to the board, citing shareholder rights, the unfiled but binding stake, and requesting immediate review of all corporate actions taken without my consent. At first the board was confused. Emails flooded in, and whispers spread. Alex and Michael brushed it off at first, laughing and mocking. "Dad's just being dramatic," Alex said in one meeting, slamming his hand on the table. "He's out. This is over." But the laughter didn't last long. The board, now aware of my legal power, began hesitating. Decisions they had taken for granted suddenly required approval, signatures, or votes where I had influence. Meetings that once ran smoothly for Alex and Michael now had undercurrents of tension. The employees, sensing the subtle shift in authority, began asking questions, quietly aligning themselves with facts rather than assumptions. The first real shock came during a routine finance meeting. Alex had approved a major contract without consulting anyone, confident in his control. My lawyer's letters arrived mid-discussion, pointing out that with my 37% stake, any major decision required my acknowledgement. The room went silent. Alex's confident smile faltered. He had underestimated the weight of my position. Michael tried to argue, raising his voice. "That's old news. He can't force anything now." But the company secretary quietly reminded them that the letters were legitimate and legally binding. Their faces turned pale as they realized the consequences of ignoring them. I didn't attend the meeting. I stayed home, making coffee, watching the events unfold through updates from Mr. Lawson. It was strange, bitterly satisfying, yes, but not out of cruelty. This was justice. This was the natural consequence of arrogance and betrayal. By the third week, my presence loomed over the company like a quiet shadow. Alex and Michael began second-guessing themselves, canceling meetings, delaying announcements. Every action they took was now scrutinized. Every decision they had made in their rush to own the company now needed review, revision, or outright reversal. And all the while, I remained calm, letting the weight of their miscalculation build naturally. They started trying to reach me directly. Emails, phone calls, even messages through other executives. They pleaded, argued, tried to intimidate. "Richard, let's meet. We can talk this through," Michael texted one evening. "It doesn't have to get ugly." But I knew it already was ugly for them, and I was patient. Then came the first public humiliation. A press release Alex had rushed out announcing a merger was halted by my legal team. Statements had to be corrected. Headlines were pulled. Investors began calling, confused, asking why the board couldn't operate without unanimous shareholder approval. The media, smelling tension, started asking questions. The children's carefully curated image of control began to crumble. I kept my communications minimal, each word calculated. "We need to follow procedure," I would say calmly whenever Mr. Lawson briefed me. Nothing more. Silence became my ally. The less I appeared desperate, the more nervous they became. One afternoon, Alex came to my lawyer's office in person, storming in, trying to intimidate. "This is ridiculous," he shouted. "Dad, you're making a mockery of everything we've done. You can't just—" Mr. Lawson held up a hand. Mr. Thompson has every legal right. Your actions are being reversed according to the law. If you continue to interfere, there will be consequences. Alex's face paled. Michael hovered behind him, biting his lip. For the first time, they saw that the man they tried to write off as finished had far more power than they realized. That night, I sat alone in my study, thinking about the weeks of betrayal, humiliation, and arrogance. The house felt quiet. My children's laughter and boasts echoed in memory only. And yet, amidst the tension, I felt a strange calm. I wasn't just reclaiming control, I was teaching a lesson, one they wouldn't forget. The next morning, the final letters went out. My 37% stake now allowed me to call an emergency board meeting. Invitations went out, not to negotiate, but to assert authority. Alex and Michael had no idea the full weight of the law, contracts, and shareholder rights that now stood behind me. When the meeting began, I walked in calmly. No words of anger, no dramatic gestures, just a quiet presence that immediately shifted the energy in the room. The board, the employees, even the children themselves noticed it. The man they had tried to oust now held undeniable power, and everyone felt it. Alex tried to speak first, but I raised a hand. The company is not yours to run. The contracts, the shares, and the rights I have reserved are not negotiable. We will proceed according to the law, and your actions up to this point will be reviewed and corrected. Michael's face drained of color. He whispered something, but I didn't hear it. The room was silent except for the sound of papers shuffling, pens scratching, and the unspoken acknowledgement. The man they had tried to humiliate had returned. In that moment, I realized the truth I had always known. Betrayal can only go so far when the other party has patience, knowledge, and a hidden edge. Alex and Michael had assumed I was powerless. They had laughed at their own father. And now, the silent executioner had arrived. The boardroom felt different that morning. The air was thick, not with dust or the faint hum of the air conditioning, but with tension, the kind that builds when those who thought they were untouchable suddenly realize the floor beneath them is shifting. Alex and Michael arrived first, smug faces attempting confidence, but I noticed the flicker of doubt in their eyes the moment they stepped inside. The employees gathered for the emergency meeting were quiet, whispering nervously among themselves. Every chair, every glance, every shuffle hinted at a quiet revolution no one had expected. I walked in calmly, carrying only a slim folder of documentation. No dramatic gestures, no anger, just presence. And presence, I had learned over decades of business and betrayal, speaks louder than words. "Good morning," I said simply, settling into my seat at the head of the table. The silence stretched. Alex cleared his throat. "Dad, I raised a hand. "Let's not waste time. The contracts you executed, the mergers you approved, the budget allocations you signed without proper authority, these are now under review. They are not valid. The 37% stake I hold gives me authority to intervene wherever corporate governance has been violated." For a moment, the room froze. Alex's jaw tightened. Michael's hand fidgeted on the table. Even the board members who had once nodded at every word the children spoke now avoided their gaze. That stake," Alex started, but the words faltered. "Yes," I interrupted calmly. "That stake. The one you never saw, the one you assumed didn't exist. It exists, and it is enforceable. All decisions you have made in the last weeks are being audited and will be corrected." Whispers rippled through the room. Some employees exchanged shocked looks, realizing that the power dynamics they had assumed were gone, completely overturned. Alex's arrogance began to crack. He tried to argue, to inject confidence into his voice, but every word faltered under the weight of legal reality. Michael leaned forward, trying a different tactic. "Dad, maybe we can negotiate. We can find a compromise." I shook my head slowly. "Compromise? You forced me out. You mocked my experience. You called me too old, too weak to run my own company. There is no compromise where betrayal begins." A hush fell over the room. I could see the panic slowly spreading. Their carefully constructed facade of control was crumbling piece by piece. Every action they had taken in triumph was now under scrutiny, every decision reversible. I motioned for my lawyer, Mr. Lawson, to step forward. He explained in precise, calm terms the corporate implications, halted contracts, invalidated approvals, mandatory votes, and the consequences of bypassing a significant shareholder. Alex and Michael listened, pale-faced, realizing they were in over their heads. By midday, the first formal reversals were underway. Contracts signed without authority were voided. Budget allocations were corrected. The board began asking questions, looking to me for direction. My children, who had thought they were in control, were now scrambling to understand the rules of a game they had assumed was theirs to play. Alex finally stood, voice tight with frustration. "You're ruining everything we've built." I leaned back slightly, measured. "I am restoring what you destroyed. The company belongs to the shareholders, not to those who assume entitlement over merit." Michael's voice shook. We didn't know it was enforceable. We didn't—" "I know," I said quietly. "You assumed power without responsibility. You underestimated me, and now you're learning the consequences. Every action has weight. Every betrayal has a price." The room grew heavier with each passing minute. The tension wasn't just legal, it was personal. They had underestimated a father, a man they thought too old to fight. And now, slowly, methodically, I was reclaiming authority. By the end of the day, Alex and Michael were exhausted. Their confidence was gone, replaced with a nervous caution I had never seen before. Employees whispered of the shift, of the quiet execution unfolding before them, and some even approached me with questions and support, showing that loyalty isn't always born of family ties, but respect for leadership and integrity. I left the office that evening, not in celebration, but in calm reflection. The storm had begun, and my children had felt the first gusts. But the work was far from over. I still held the silent power of the 37% stake, the leverage that would allow me to oversee every major decision, to correct missteps, and to teach lessons that arrogance could never understand. That night, as I sat alone in my study, I thought of all the sacrifices I had made for the company and for them. Betrayal had been bitter, humiliation sharp, but justice, quiet, unyielding justice, was sweeter than I had imagined. I knew one thing with certainty. The silent execution was only beginning, and by the time it was complete, Alex and Michael would understand, in a way words could never convey, that power without respect and understanding is nothing. The following morning, the boardroom was electric with tension. Word of my interventions had spread quickly, and the atmosphere was thick with uncertainty. Alex and Michael arrived early, attempting to radiate confidence, but I could see the doubt in their eyes. Every step they took, every glance they exchanged, betrayed their fear. The company they thought they controlled so easily was slipping through their fingers, and they hadn't even realized how far they'd fallen. I entered quietly, holding only the folder of official documents. No dramatic entrance, no theatrics, just the weight of truth and authority. The employees and board members turned to look at me. Some whispered under their breath, glances flicking between me and the children. The power dynamics had shifted completely, and the room knew it. "Good morning," I said simply, taking my seat at the head of the table. The room fell silent. Alex cleared his throat, his voice tight. "Dad, I raised a hand. "Let's not waste time. The contracts you executed, the mergers you attempted, the budget allocations you approved without my authorization are now under review. My 37% stake grants me the legal authority to intervene in every matter where corporate governance has been compromised. This is not negotiable." Alex's confidence faltered. He swallowed hard, trying to mask his panic. Michael's hand twitched on the table. They were used to arrogance and bluster working in their favor. Now it worked against them. Every word I spoke, every calm step I took, was a reminder. The underestimated can strike with precision and patience. I motioned for Mr. Lawson to speak, and he presented a clear, meticulous review of the legal implications. He outlined which contracts were invalid, which decisions required immediate reversal, and the consequences for bypassing significant shareholder rights. The board members nodded, some visibly relieved, while Alex and Michael's faces grew pale. The arrogance that had fueled their takeover was gone, replaced with panic and disbelief. This is unfair," Alex stammered. "We've been running the company. We've worked hard." "Hard work does not justify betrayal," I interrupted calmly. "You assumed authority without responsibility. You disregarded the rules, mocked experience, and forced me out. Actions have consequences, Alex, and you are now facing them." Michael's voice shook. "Dad, maybe we can negotiate. There has to be a way." I shook my head. "There is no negotiation when trust is broken. You will comply with the law. You will correct your mistakes. And you will understand that power comes with responsibility, respect, and integrity. Lessons you seem to have forgotten." The employees, watching quietly, began to whisper among themselves, realizing the tide had shifted. Some approached me after the meeting, quietly expressing support. The silent power of the 37% stake wasn't just legal leverage, it was a statement. A reminder that patience and preparation can overturn arrogance and betrayal. By midday, the first formal reversals were in motion. Contracts signed without authority were voided, budgets corrected, decisions halted until proper approvals were obtained. Alex and Michael tried to resist, but the law, combined with the unyielding authority of the rightful shareholder, left them powerless. Every move they had taken in triumph now needed review, and every delay reflected their miscalculation. Alex finally stood, voice tight, frustration and fear mixing together. "You're destroying everything we've worked for." "I am restoring what you attempted to steal," I replied evenly. "This company belongs to all shareholders, not to those who assume entitlement through betrayal. You overstepped, and now you will face the consequences." Michael's voice was barely a whisper. We didn't know about the stake. We never thought—" "I know," I said. "Ignorance is no defense. Assumptions are dangerous. And arrogance. Arrogance is a teacher whose lessons are always painful." The tension in the room was palpable. They could feel the full weight of the situation. The legal power, the strategic patience, the authority I had quietly maintained all these years. By the time the day ended, Alex and Michael were drained, defeated, forced to acknowledge that the man they had mocked was far from powerless. Weeks passed. Slowly, methodically, the company stabilized under proper governance. My interventions ensured accountability. Every misstep by my children was corrected. Investors regained confidence. Employees found renewed trust in leadership. And my children, Alex and Michael, had no choice but to watch as the authority they had arrogantly assumed returned to its rightful place. One evening, Michael approached me privately. "Dad, I understand now," he said, voice small, almost hesitant. We made mistakes. We thought we knew everything. We didn't." I nodded. "Understanding comes with humility, Michael. You can rebuild trust, but it will take time and effort. Remember, power without respect and integrity is meaningless." Alex, quieter and more cautious, offered a similar sentiment later. Neither apology was perfect. Neither was complete. But both were acknowledgement. And in that, there was hope. The lesson had been learned, not through shouting, not through rage, but through patience, preparation, and the quiet assertion of truth. I returned to my office, once again fully in control, reflecting on the storm of betrayal, arrogance, and eventual justice. The house was quiet, the company was stabilized, and the knowledge of the 37% stake, the silent executioner I had become, reminded me of one enduring truth. Never underestimate the quiet power of patience, knowledge, and foresight. If you've ever been betrayed, underestimated, or pushed out by those you trusted most, remember this story. The underestimated can always rise, and the silent executioner is often the one who changes everything. And for those watching, stay tuned. Our next story will reveal an even darker betrayal. A sibling rivalry that escalated to corporate sabotage, where loyalty and trust were shattered, and revenge came from the most unexpected place. You won't want to miss it. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it arrives quietly, but it always lands.